to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Just want to let everybody know that tonight, I posted my community notes, but in case you didn't see, I will be live for Talking Giants with Bad Dog. It'll be on Bad Dog's channel, so be sure to check that out as we alternate channels every week. And this week, of course, I'm sure we're going to be talking about Eli Manning. That'll be part of the conversation, obviously, at his press conference today, along with a lot of other things. The future of this organization, obviously, with some of the coaches they've brought in. And, I'm sure we'll touch on free agency as well. Another thing that we might touch on is this story. I saw this yesterday, actually, on GiantsWire.com. I was just so busy I couldn't get a video on it. Joe Judge finally came out and made some, statements about how he feels about the New York Giants roster. Of course, when he was first interviewed, he was asked a number of questions. One of the questions he was asked was about his staff. And, he said he wanted to bring in guys that were great teachers, guys that were good people. And he started to bring in that staff. And these guys are going to need to teach these young players. He also said that he is going to need to evaluate the roster further before he could really say things about individual players or about the talents of this team or about where he sees this team next year. Now, in these quotes, he didn't give you record predictions, but he did say he was impressed with some of the things he said, and he said that he was very excited about this upcoming season, about basically what he thinks him and the Giants coaching staff could bring to some of the players on these rosters. Now, he didn't release any names per se, right? A lot of people seem to be on the fence about Daniel Jones. Some people are nervous. How will Joe Judge feel about Daniel Jones? Is he going to want to bring in another quarterback? I'm not too worried about that, at least year one. Now, if Daniel Jones doesn't perform well, that could change. But going into Joe Judge's first year and Daniel Jones' second, I think that Joe Judge took this job knowing that Daniel Jones was going to be his quarterback. I don't think that he's that naive, especially with Dave Gettleman staying on as the general manager and Mara. There's no way, in my opinion, even though the Cardinals did it last year, that the New York Giants would have given him this job knowing that he'd be moving on from Daniel Jones. Not to mention Dave Gettleman has said nothing but glowing things about Daniel Jones, in recent months. So I'm not worried about that. Some guys that he may cut, obviously the names that we've talked about, the guys that have high salaries, the Alec Ogletrees of the world, the Antoine Bethe's of the world, and along with numerous other players. But the core of this team, the young players, no, he's looking to teach these guys. He's not looking to get rid of them. So I'm not too worried about that. But let's jump into the quotes off the mouth of Joe Judge. Some people say I kind of look like this guy. What do you guys think? I'm just curious. Get the comments below. But anyway, here is the first quote from Newsday.com when asked about the Giants roster and whether or not he's evaluated it. He said, "To be honest with you, after watching them, I'm very excited about working with our team. I was excited before I saw them, and I'm even more excited now." And I'll tell you what, a young head coach, if I was a young head coach like him, I would be really excited with this roster because it's not like we lack talent. We lack experience. A big part of our roster, even though I think we have the 9th or 10th youngest roster, which it seems like we should have a younger roster, the guys that start and are in, positions of importance, for the most part, are incredibly young, specifically on the defense. So I'm sure he looked at the tape and he said, these guys got talent. DeAndre Baker's got talent. Dexter Lawrence got talent. O'Shane Ximines has talent. Lorenzo Carter has talent. And obviously he thinks he's going to be able to get the most out of him. He obviously preaches that he's a great teacher. He went to school to get his doctorate degree, and he wants to mold these guys. But it's encouraging to hear him say that he was excited when he got the job, as he should be. He's 38 years old, getting the head coaching job with the New York Giants. But after evaluating the players, sitting down, watching the film, he's even more excited to jump into it. This is another quote that came off of him. Talking about, further, when he was asked further about the roster. We'll go into more detail on that when I get all the coordinators and position coaches together, and we can go through the roster as a whole and talk through where we believe we are, what team needs may come up, which will enter into free agency and draft process. I'm not going to make any public evaluations on these guys right now, Judge said. Part of it is evaluating what you need to fix, what you need to adjust, and that's what we're looking at right now as coaches on how we can build this system to immediately build this foundation and move forward with these guys. And yeah, of course, when a new head coach takes over a roster, whether it's a head coach or whether it's a general manager taking over a roster, You saw what Dave Gettleman did. When Dave Gettleman first took the New York Giants job, he got rid of the loose ends, the guys that he didn't think fit his mold. He got rid of the Olivier Vernons, the Snack Harris, and the Odell Beckham. Well, Joe Judge is going to do the same thing. He's going to scour through this roster, and he's going to pick out players that he doesn't see fitting this roster, whether it's for financial reasons or schematic fit. One player I've mentioned is Marcus Golden. We'll have to wait and see if he does decide to retain him. Alec Ogletree, I think, will be replaced, like I said, because of his salary. I think there's a number of players that will be replaced due to salary, and we will make adjustments in free agency. And that is what he's in the process of doing. And in fairness to Joe Judge, I think it's probably the smart thing to not come out and name individual players before you even really take the job, before you even do OTAs or anything like that, and have a complete staff, right? The first thing he's got to do, like I've said several times, is finish this coaching staff, which he's close to doing, right? We've heard a couple more names, but for the most part, we've got the core guys in here. We know the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, O-line coach, DB coach, so running back coach. So we've got most of the coaches. Now, some of the names, Freddie Kitchens, we don't know his exact role. Bielema, we don't know his exact role, but we know for the most part who's going to be on this coaching staff outside of maybe one or two more positions. So I think he's now getting to the point where he's starting to evaluate the roster. He's going to talk it over with Graham. He's going to talk it over with Garrett, and they're going to find the faults. They're going to find the strengths, and they're going to pick out the players that they want going forward and what they need to, what adjustments they need to make with the players they have going forward to get the most out of them. So I think that's the part of the process that they're in now. And then finally he said, there are a few that we still have to get in touch with, and a lot of guys are on vacation or out of pocket. He's talking about the players on the New York Giants roster. So he's basically saying we've talked to most of them, but there's a few that we haven't. The other thing that he mentioned in the article that I did read, I didn't pull up the quote, was that a lot of the players stay home in New York, and he views that as an advantage because they're close to home. They could have constant communication. Judge said, there are some guys who have to tie up loose ends. I've had a number of players walk into my office and be able to sit down and have conversations, which has been a great experience. There are a lot of guys, there it is. There are a lot of guys who stay in the area. I think that's a benefit of being in the New York area. They don't have to leave to get out of town in the offseason. They may want to get back, they may want to get some sunshine at some point in the winter, catch a little bit of a break, but ultimately they're back in New York. They stay local. And I think that's a great advantage for us. And I agree with him. I think back to our Super Bowl season in 2011. Obviously the 2012 Super Bowl with Eli Manning. And a huge advantage to Eli Manning that year and the New York Giants offense. If you're a diehard Giants fan, you're going to remember this. Months before OTAs, Eli Manning, because players stayed at home, Victor Cruz was obviously the big name there who wasn't even on the roster yet. He was out at high schools practicing with these guys for the upcoming season. And I do think it's a huge advantage when players stay home because you have constant communications, especially when you have a new head coach who's trying to build a culture, who's trying to get familiar with the players and the roster and everything else. But nevertheless, I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to talk about it because when I read the article, when I read the headline, I was encouraged by it. To hear that Joe Judge, the new coach of the New York Giants, finally is starting to come out and say things about the roster. Now, the other thing I keep saying is let's make sure we don't go into the season with way too high of hopes. Let's not set ourselves up for failure. But nevertheless, it's encouraging to see that Joe Judge is very excited about the roster. I'm very excited as a fan to see what Joe Judge and this coaching staff could do for this roster, both on the offensive and defensive side of the football this coming offseason. And obviously we're going to get the other thing that I'm really looking forward to is the OTAs, the mandatory minicamps, because all this guy has expressed is he's going to practice hard and all this, and the whole process will be interesting to see as a New York Giants fan, and I can't wait to see how it unfolds. Obviously, it's going to start with the Senior Bowl this Saturday. I'm going to stream that. I'll be watching that, obviously, because Giants are going to be picking out players from that, but it starts in late March with free agency. Then we're going to get to the draft. And right after the draft, you're going to start to see him, evaluating the talent, how he's going to handle his practices. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of quotes to come out with that. And this is going to be a really fun and interesting offseason to cover. I can't wait to see what Joe Judge draws up with this New York Giants roster and see what we got going forward. But, guys, thank you for watching. And as always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.